Three, two, one. Hello and welcome back to Ohio Valley. Let's try it again. Too much coffee. Hello and welcome back to another Ohio Valley podcast with State Representative candidate Richard Oliveto. We are actually recording this in the car. And Richard, where do we begin? It's been, about a couple months?
Yes, it has been, I believe. And I think our last one was at least in March, I think it was.
I believe so. First of all, I guess, congrats to your son. He just graduated high school, right?
Yes, he did. I'm very proud. Graduated at Stemville High School on May 21st, and I took the virtual walk, and very, very proud. So, and he's relieved, and he's enjoying his first weekend without studies. And he's also looking at going to college in the fall.
I know. I just had some of the graduation cake. It was delicious. Well, we have other congrats. I believe you won something last month. Is this true?
Yeah, I'm very, very relieved. Also, very happy with the results. We were. It was a very unusual ending to the last month of the race. Of course, was under the COVID-19 prevention precautions. So it was a very complex last month. So no one really knew. No candidate in any race we were talking to knew what was the outcome, how to predict it. But we're happy with the results, and I'm really pleased with being the Democratic nominee for the state House representative position this year.
Right. Yeah, I believe it's been at least 2 months. This is one of those, it's almost like a Twilight Zone episode of what's been going on, but not just here, but around the world. And thankfully, you and I are healthy and safe and all that. And of course, we wish all of you out there to stay safe. Yes. I guess the question now is, Richard, where do we go from here?
Well, first, I just want to say, because I haven't been able to get a chance to really tell everyone, but say thank you to the supporters and to all those that did take the time to vote. It was not simple. We did get ballots out, and I helped in that process of getting ballots into Kroger's, into Lowe's, and places in Belmont County like that. Yeah. And I was told by Frankie DiCarlo and Diane and others at the Board of Elections that really made a difference. So I really appreciate people taking the time and seeking a ballot and then voting. And among those, I think they had 25% turnout, which isn't bad given the circumstance of an all absentee vote. Yeah. And I want to thank those for support, and really hats off to all the candidates who ran, I think, fair races, clean races. Some obviously did very well. Others, came up short. My opponent ran a very good race. He Charlie was a young guy, and he, I think, put together a good campaign, and it certainly was a competitive race. So hats off to him. But I, of course, pleased with my support, and very, very happy that we ended up in the right column. At this time, of course, we're in a little bit of a lull period between the primary and the general, but you obviously taking some time to reassess where we go from here. Looking at, and again, the COVID crisis has shaped this election process in such a way you can see it from the presidential race on down. It definitely creates a different challenge. And right now, with the states reopening, we might have some hope that by the end of the summer we can have some public meetings. But right now, it's pretty much podcast and digital and social media, and also we'll be doing some other types of outreach through the mail to individuals. So I'm looking for basically just gathering up and unifying the Democratic Party, hopefully bringing those that together that supported others, and we hopefully that we can bring them together now as Democrats and moderate Republicans, and those that I've talked to several people in the public, even during the primary, that I was really encouraged by some of the folks on the other side of the aisle that said they would be supportive of me. That made me feel good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, looking back, who knew that doing these podcasts would be so valuable? I mean, I knew these would be convenient and, of course, safe to do. People can listen at home at their leisure. But considering what's been going on, this might be the best way forward, is doing these podcasts. And maybe one day or a weekend or a night, we can do a Facebook Live, and
Absolutely.
people can ask their questions live. Yeah.
No question about it. The virus has challenged all the candidates to find ways to connect, and while it's hard to replace the face to face in
Yes.
person
Right.
campaigning in retail politics, and
Right.
just getting among even meeting like say city councils and regional councils and groups of court personnel in courthouses.
Yeah.
It's a loss, but so that yes, what happens is the digital world and advertising becomes critical, and this is a critical way. And I would love to. Some candidates in the statewide races are already involved in Facebook Zooming types of
Yeah.
regularly scheduled things. So we'll be doing some of that. I'm anticipating that the podcasts have been instrumental. And good news, I think, too, was we got a lot of campaigning done before the 17th of March when they called the election the 16th. And it was kind of a last minute decision by governor. People were debating whether it was the thing to do, but it happened, and it probably in hindsight worked to a certain degree. And so
Yeah.
we had to deal with it. But I feel one of the things that mattered in addition to the podcast and some of the digital social media was thankfully in the early days we worked hard and managed to get from northern Jefferson County down to southern Belmont and into
Yeah.
Monroe.
Yeah.
We did do some neighborhood canvassing, and that was really important, I think, to bring in. It was like I said, a competitive race, but here we are. Now we're past the primary,
Right.
and I'm honored to be the Democratic nominee for the State House. Jack Serra has created quite a legacy and all over the district. Everybody loves Jack and thinks he's done a great job. So we want to try to keep his seat and keep the legacy going. This seat has been blue for probably as long as I can remember, and I'm 61. So Art Bowers was there when I was a young man, and ever since it has been a Democratic. Yet we know that this faces a substantial Republican challenge. So we have our work cut out for us this fall.
I just wanted to say that technology certainly is important, but it's only a tool, and I don't think it's a direct replacement for shaking hands, meeting people, pros and cons of going out to talk to people. But considering these challenging times, it just makes sense to do these podcasts and wait and see when things hopefully loosen up, meaning being safer. Maybe we can go out and contact the people or talk to people face to face.
Absolutely.
But I think for now, this is probably the best way to do it.
It's absolutely a tool, and there's various things now that the candidates have to do, and get the message out. And this is what I like about podcasts as well. Is people are on their phones. It's not something that's foreign to many people anymore, and because it's easy. So, and the other thing is cost effective. It doesn't cost a lot to put together one of these podcasts, as opposed to having to buy time on a television ad, and even putting ads in newspapers. And there's mailers that all that can be done. But the cost of those things drives up election costs, and it's not easy, especially in these times again.
Right.
So it's a very valuable tool, and we hope to do more of them as we go. But I want to say again, I was thankful to the support that I've received from really throughout the region, and I really know that some people in Belmont County listening in Monroe probably don't know me as much as some folks up here in Jefferson, but I appreciated being able to win and pull Belmont County into the column, and we got some work to do, and we want to.
Right.
I'm looking forward to it. The night of the election, I was asked by a reporter, what's your thoughts now? And I said, well, the key thing is to unify the party, and Jefferson County Democratic Party has an opportunity to unify now, and that'll influence hopefully Belmont and Monroe, and we'll continue on with this challenge. Getting a lot at present. What's really happening, and I can just speak to this, I'm getting a lot of interest group mail, and they want to know positions, and they want to know.
Sure, They want to know where the candidates stand, and I feel very good about that. One of the critical supporters, as people know, for me was the union and the building trades, and they were really instrumental, I believe, in supporting me. So I want to say hats off to Bill Davis and Ethan Stoltz and others
who came in and supported me, and I can hope we can continue on with obtaining now the public unions and the teachers. And
That was a total of what, 2 unions right before the election?
well, it was
endorsement?
33 unions.
I'm sorry, 33.
It was a 2 union groups, but the
okay.
Building Trades Council was 32 unions in the trades. It was the Upper Howard Valley Building Trades,
right,
which entails all the building trades as a council. But then there was a separate Wheeling union that came and supported also. And reason why people said, well, why Wheeling? Why would West Virginia?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the workers work over here in Ohio, especially on these fracking facilities. So it was a very much an honor, and I appreciated so much the support and continuous support from the laborers, from electricians, sheet workers, bricklayers. I was out one day and doing hand billing down in Belmont County, and a gentleman saw me going up to his door, and he was coming to his house, driving into his driveway. He said, "What are you doing?" He seemed to be kind of fearsome. He thought of maybe what was a stranger doing at his door.
Yeah.
And once he saw my hand out, he says, "You're endorsed by the unions." He says, "I'm a bricklayer." He says, "You got my vote." And
nice.
That's the critical nature of getting the union endorsements.
Okay.
So we look forward to this happening more often.
I mean, that's important. Speaking of that, Richard, you told me a wonderful story. I think it was last month after you won, about being, I think it was in Belmont County. Mm-hmm. You was out putting signs at 2 a.m. And somebody called the police thinking you was a robber. Mm.
I was down in Shadyside, and I think what had happened was I was just out there, and Shadyside has a very specific areas you can put your signs. You can't put it right in town, so you have to be on the entrance way in and out of town.
Right.
And I was sort of in this field next to a large facility, and I think they guard that facility. So anyway, the police were wondering who was this guy out in the field at 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
And I think other cars did call because they were passing by. It was on the main entrance to Shadyside, and on a route that leads out of town, really onto Route 7.
Yeah.
And right away, several cruisers pulled up. Lights were flashing. They flashed their spotlight on me, and they probably thought, who is this character out in the middle of the field? And it was sort of misty, if not raining slightly. And they thought, who would be out in the right mind in a field next to a couple campaign signs? So they came up to me, and the officer had his hand even on his revolver. Right. And I turned to him, and I had the sign in my hand, and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm him." And they said, "Who?" And I said, and they came up to me, and they started smiling. They said, "Oh, you're the candidate." He said, "You're out here." That happened more than once, by the way. And it wasn't just in Shadyside, but that was most demonstrable. And we ended up having a 25-minute talk, and I think it helped me with the officers down there in Shadyside. One of them ended up telling me that my uncle represents him, and was his lawyer. And so that led to an interesting conversation. And my uncle Pete was his lawyer. So you never know what happens at 3 a.m, but I was risking a little bit and maybe getting out there. But that's what you have to do. And I think because we was willing to put some time into it like that, it paid off.
Right.
And the officers certainly were very, very impressed. They said, "Well, you're certainly hard at work out here at this time, at the hour that you're out." And we laughed about it. And so I think in being that they're on the shift, they're on the late night shift, the graveyard shift, they found it interesting that I was out there doing that.
Well, they had some to kind of talk about it, take some of the stress off,
Yeah. And again, it happened in other jurisdictions too. I was stopped one night in Bel Air. I had actually gone through a stop sign with no traffic, but it was late.
Yeah.
And I didn't even see the stop sign in Bel Air, and I pulled through it. And the gentleman pulled me over, and he said, "You went through a stop sign." I said, "I didn't even see it. I apologize." And he saw that I was putting up a sign also. It turns out, he says to me, he says, "It's so strange, Mr. Oliveto." He says, "I stopped your father for the exact same reason going through our town about 30 years ago." So
man.
I said, "You mean the Judge Oliveto?" He said, "Yes, Judge Oliveto." He says, he missed the same stop sign.
Oh, jeez.
I felt kind of, it was a special moment. But,
so that's the strategy to get the votes. Run stop sign. No, I'm just kidding. And then get the votes, right.
Certainly get yourself introduced to the local police.
Well, that's one way to do it. Not recommended, but okay. Wow.
But all of them were great, and they were gracious about it. And once they understood that we were doing campaigning, it wasn't
Right.
it wasn't loitering or trying to
Right. Right.
basically check out the places, or
No.
they knew I wasn't a robber or
Just a candidate, fighting for,
yeah.
for every vote.
Yeah.
That's,
And again, there were some questions. People always say, well, is that candidate going to really fight for the campaign they're in? Or are they going to rest? And I have, given my name, my father's legacy, some people thought, well, he'll run on my dad's name. But I've been around long enough, and including being around my father, knowing that you can't take anything for granted. You have to work for it. And I think it paid off. We were out late at night many times, and I saw the sun come up a few times. In fact, down in Monroe County, I watched the sun come up over the Ohio River, which is beautiful around the bend down there. And so it wasn't without some late night sacrifices that we made it through.
Right, right. Well, that is certainly a heartwarming story, to say the least. Wonderful stories, that make this a lot more real, and doing these podcasts. So,
yeah, politics is not. I always suggest that if you have a chance, anybody who can or wants to should try some form of elective politics, just to see what it's like to ask people for their vote. It's a humbling experience, and
right,
and you don't know how. There are some very interesting responses you get. Sometimes they're not altogether positive, and most of the people are very, very respectful, and most of the time. But sometimes you get the opposition, and that's what it's about. You're out there putting yourself, and you're asking every individual for their vote. Every vote counts. Too.
Right.
This was a good turnout, but it was a fairly low turnout. Because of the virus. Even though it's a presidential year, and we're hoping in the fall, because it's a presidential year, there'll be a greater turnout, and I think there will be, regardless of what happens with this virus.
Yeah.
But it's going to, when you have something like this crisis happening,
right,
everybody's vote counts.
Oh, sure.
And it's critical that, again, I can't say enough. The Board of Elections too, they did a lot of work, both in all three counties. They were in their offices the last 45 days, 6 days a week, managing those applications, getting the application ballots out, counting and organizing those ballots that came in. Hats off to the Board of Election workers. They were down there literally sometimes 8 and 10 hours a day, more so. And then I think it was sometimes they said they did 2 weeks, they did 7 days a week. I was talking to the folks in Jefferson County. So they're very, very dedicated folks at the Board of Elections that did a wonderful job in putting together a response to the crisis.
Wonderful. All right. Before we end this, briefly, how can people reach you, Richard?
Well, the most simple way is go on Facebook, and on two ways. Is We Are the 96th group, and there is also just me, Rich Olavito, on Facebook. But I do have 5,000 friends now, and it's hard to get in. But at the same time, my email is mccr1983@gmail.com. Also, we have some access on Twitter under the same thing. We Are the 96. One other thing I got to mention was I just have to say this because fundraising is important. I have an ActBlue account. It is tied into the We Are the 96, and we'll put it out on some more of the digital advertising as well. But the ActBlue account, we're taking donations as $1, $3, $25. Like Bernie Sanders did.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't have major donors at this point, and we appreciate every
keeping it real.
And the support. So we appreciate any support anyone can give. These races, especially the general election, will cost, and we anticipate the cost to be there. So we appreciate any support individuals can give.
Also, if you have any questions, you can email me at the Ohio Valley Podcast @gmail.com. I believe we have 4 of these up already on YouTube. Just search Ohio Valley Podcast and go from there. Like I said, I know it's been a while since the last one, but in case you haven't noticed, there's a little bit of a pandemic going on. So,
Well, thank you, Carmen, for doing these, and you're
absolutely
been really helpful and critical. And also, the public should know that if you saw an ad on WTRF in the last weekend of the formal part of the race before the virus took over and before we stopped and went to absentee voting on the weekend of March 16th.
Yeah.
Carmen did a critical production, and he made a video production of it all his own, and we utilized it and gave it to Seven, and they took it and they ran it. So I appreciate your work.
You know, that was like a spur of the moment idea. I think it was that weekend before. It was a sunny weekend. I went down to the marina.
One of the few sunny weekends.
Yeah, really. And I just took some video, then put it all. I was just brainstorming, keeping it short. And I'm sure that helped a little bit. But you know, maybe we'll be doing some more of those.
Give a little more personal side.
Right.
I think.
Right.
So we look forward to more of Carmen productions and
Hollywood. Here we come. So anyway,
a star is born.
Star is born. You never know. Speaking of the stars, I'm looking up at the sky and it is star. Beautiful night here.
Yes.
This is very low tech, folks. Just my cell phone inside the car and looking up at the stars. Literally, you know.
Literally.
Nice sleeping weather.
Yes. Very, very nice. And I appreciate it, Carmen.
Yeah.
And
you're
hopefully
welcome.
We'll get back to another podcast. We'll have a little bit more to report about the actual campaign coming up.
Sometime in June. Yeah, this is the last weekend. It's the Memorial Day weekend, actually. So probably about a month or so, less than a month, we'll have an update and go from there. Mm-hmm. Again, if you have your questions, if you have any questions, you know how to reach us. So and
one sign off will be along with my son. I got to say hats off and congratulations to all the seniors out there.
Yes.
I know you've had a very difficult, unusual ending to your senior year of high school and college, but I just want to say all your hard work and dedications is what you take.
All the graduates,
you. So congratulations to all of you. And I understand it very well, given my son just went through the same thing. So we know what the seniors are going through, but that doesn't diminish your work in any way. So keep that in mind and keep on going. Keep going.
A very special class of 2020. Yes. Congrats to all. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up for this one. Again, you know how to reach us, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we'll answer the questions hopefully on the next podcast in about a month or so. So be safe, take care, and arrivederci.
Good night.